We'll go ahead and make a start then this afternoon. First of all, thank you to all of you who've come to be live in our Cobham audience. We are being joined by colleagues in Egham and Hillingdon, and so I certainly want to thank Alex and Sue who've helped set up the GoToMeeting connections to those two schools. I wanted to say a little bit about this event before we start the event. This has been billed as a Twilight Seminar. That may have been a bit confusing to people because we haven't actually done Twilight Seminars in the past. But what SIM has been trying to do over this past year is to introduce a series of different kinds of activities where we're featuring all school teacher-led professional development. And the reason that that's so unique is that all of our schools have done professional development within their schools for their campus. So Cobham does it, Egham does it, Hillingdon does it, Doha does it. But what we're actually trying to do is bridge the gap between our campuses and provide professional development simultaneously to all of our campuses. The other unique thing is that the ideas for these professional development sessions are coming from teachers. These are topics that teachers are passionate about, topics that teachers know about, topics that teachers know other people want to know more about. And so unlike some of the other professional development you might attend, which is selected primarily by your head of school or by your division principal or by your subject leader, one of the ideas behind the things that we're doing is these are ideas that are coming from you. And again, that's a founding principle of SIM. This is about unleashing the potential of the teachers who we have within our school already. Other kinds of events that we've done so far, we have done a workshop, which was one of our first workshops, teacher-led, bringing together people from all of our campuses. We are currently running an online course on action research, which has people, again, from each of our campuses who are participating in that online course. And on May 16th, we're going to be doing what we're calling a celebration of learning, which is an opportunity for all of the project leaders that we've worked with over this past year to tell you about what they've been working on. It's on the 16th of May. It's a Saturday morning. It is a Saturday. It's just from 9:30 until 12. It's rather short. And that theme postcards refers to the fact that they're going to be making very, very brief 10-minute presentations. And what they're going to be telling you is essentially what they could write on the back of a postcard. So the idea is that they're just going to give you a flavor of the work that they're doing. And then in that morning, we've allowed a lot of time for social interactions that you can ask questions about the projects and engage directly with the project leaders. We are in the process of thinking about how we're going to take this project forward next year, or this work forward next year. And we're actually proposing a whole series of things that we're calling SIM Explorations, which will be a combination of seminars and webinars and half-day workshops and all-day workshops and online courses, again, that are driven by teachers and offered up for everyone from all of our campuses to participate in simultaneously. This afternoon, our program is going to be led by Jane Fox, and Jane Fox is one of our project leaders of a SIM project on native language enrichment. Jane is going to come up in just a moment and introduce our speaker. And before that, I just wanted to let everyone know that today's session is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again or share it with colleagues who weren't able to make it today. And the written presentation of the literature review that Dina is going to be presenting, we do have some paper copies for those of you who come today, and it will be posted online as a PDF on the SIM website by the end of the week. So we're trying to provide the information in loads and loads of different ways for people who weren't able to join us today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Jane.
Thank you, Ben. Hello and welcome to everyone from the four corners of our ACS world. And thank you for taking the time to connect with us in some way today for this presentation. Whether you've come to affirm what you already know about bilingual learners and multilingual learners, or if you come to find out new information on how to create the conditions for them to achieve their full potential, we hope that we slake some of your thirst for professional knowledge and that you go home with something that you can chew on in the way of professional food. Right. Before I introduce our illustrious presenter here, I'd like to just place the presentation in the context, if I may. The action research project that our team is involved in aims to audit the current ACS provision of native language enrichment across all four campuses. And we're doing that so that we can build an informed best practice framework going forward that will actually help to address the needs of our bilingual and multilingual learners. And as you may know, The NLE program, as it is at the moment, is an extracurricular offering, and it forms a component, an important one, but a component of the greater picture of the learning activities across the school. And in recognition of that position, albeit an important one, it's important that we also examine best practice within the NLE program in the light of best practice in the big picture, for example, in a broader context of the evidence-based research that informs current philosophy in education. And we conducted some of that knowledge search ourselves, but also came to the realization that it's very important for us to have the surety that we're working from a current professional knowledge base, and that we have a degree of expert objectivity that guides our analysis as well. So to that end, we commissioned the literature review, and that's the literature review that you'll be hearing today. And to that end, thank you to Latifa and Ben in Centre for Inspiring Minds for helping us to commission that, and also to our heads of school and the board for affording us this opportunity. Our speaker today is Dr. Dina Mehmet-Begovic. She's a lecturer in education at the University College London's Institute of Education. Her main area of research is in sociolinguistics and, very appropriately, the position of languages in education. She led the development of the new PGCE level module, English as an Additional Language Pathway, and works at the Institute of Education as a module leader, a tutor, and a graduate supervisor. She's an active contributor to the London Centre for Leadership in Learning and Research and Development Network. Without further ado, I give you the presenter and author of our literature review, Dr. Dina Mehmet-Begovic.
Do you want to just ask them if they're here? I'm just thinking would be good just to...
So before we go on and before Dina presents, can I just ask Egham and Hillingdon, can you hear us okay? You may need to turn your mics on to reply, or you could put a message in the chat box.
Egham can hear you well, Latifa.
Thank you. Okay, Hillingdon, I'm going to guess that you can, and we're going to continue. Thank you. Oh, yes, they can hear us. Thank you. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Jane, for a lovely introduction. And I just would like to say it's been fantastic working with the team here, Ben, Latifa, and Jane. Lots of enthusiasm for this work. And I'm really honoured to finally have the opportunity to work with international schools, because most of my work and research has been based in mainstream schools and in London. As we know, the number of international schools, bilingual schools, is growing, and for us researchers to really understand bilingualism fully in London and wider, it's important to engage with international and with bilingual schools. Okay, so basically the starting point for this work has been that there is a marked change in terms of the profile of the students who apply to become pupils here, and they're becoming increasingly bilingual, multilingual, some of them new to English, and there are obviously lots of questions in terms of how to provide appropriate support for them and integrate them. Also, your Federation of Schools is growing. You are developing new sites in countries where English is not the language of the country. And obviously, there are additional complexities in terms of teaching in English and being based in a country that uses a different language. So as all of you are aware, recently, there was rebranding of ACS into ACS International Schools, and we also want to address the ethos of being an international school what that really means in terms of bilingualism and multilingualism. So the aim of this literature review is to provide an overview of relevant research evidence and key issues which are important in terms of providing conditions for bilingual, plurilingual learners in order to develop their full potential. Developing children's full potential is in the mission of every school, and this is really what education is all about. So when we talk about bilingual students, we need to take into account that their full potential includes their home language, their mother tongue, however you refer to it, and also perhaps other languages that they've been exposed to. So this is just to introduce key concepts. In your schools, you have mother tongue support and mother tongue support teachers. Researchers in this field have been questioning the term mother tongue because it's increasingly seen as gendered, and there are suggestions that perhaps home language is maybe a more appropriate term. So again, this is something to think about in terms of how you want to brand this provision that you have in your schools. Also, in terms of literature, mother tongue support issues are addressed under literature that's to do with bilingualism, multilingualism, and plurilingualism. I'm sure all of you are familiar with these terms. Perhaps plurilingualism is somewhat unfamiliar and new, so I will just spend a few minutes explaining the kind of key differences between these terms. In mainstream schools in England, we talk about bilingual EAL learners, and the definition that we use is basically everybody who is exposed to another language. This could be in their homes, in their communities. So the focus, the emphasis is on exposure, on living in several languages. And this is a very inclusive definition because we have very diverse profiles of bilingual learners. And it doesn't address any of the complex issues to do with competency, proficiency, fluency, and literacy in their home language or in English. So under this umbrella term, you can find profiles of children who are new to English or very proficient in English, who are also highly proficient in their home languages, or perhaps have excellent spoken skills in their first languages, home languages, but they haven't had a chance to acquire literacy in their home language. So it's a variety of profiles, and I understand from talking to your team that also in your schools now you are seeing diverse profiles, and it's important to engage with the fact that not all bilingual children will need the same type of support, and obviously they will also have different talents and different potential in terms of their languages. I just want to flag up that the key to understanding bilingualism is actually to make sure that we always bear in mind that a bilingual person is not a simplistic sum of two monolinguals. So the two languages they use are not in separate boxes, and even though when they come to your geography class and they're only functioning in English, because that is the expectation and the rule, still in their thinking, in their inner dialogue, they're always drawing on all of their linguistic experiences and their first language, especially if they're new to English. A lot of that will be happening while they're working on tasks. So also it is important to understand that once we become bilingual and start using two languages, there's a qualitative change that happens in our thinking, in our mental functioning. And the research evidence that I will show you, it's really exciting because it highlights that everything from processing of visual images to, to actually developing metalinguistic skills, everything changes if there are two languages used. So this qualitative difference is very important to take on board. In terms of understanding differences between multilingualism and plurilingualism, European Council has published several documents, and they're really promoting this concept of plurilingualism. And in a way, it is trying to make a qualitative leap in terms of our understanding about, this functioning in different languages. Basically, according to documents published by the European Council, multilingual approach is seen as attitude to languages which kind of exist along each other in society and kind of in the individual brain. It's kind of a separate competence. And then there is this idealized competence of native speakers that everybody tries to achieve. In the concept of plurilingualism, the plurilingual approach, what the European Council is saying, first of all, we need to acknowledge that anybody can only have partial knowledge of any language they use. So that includes your home language. And anybody who's kind of engaged with trying to translate a document or interpret for somebody, as soon as you move out of the domain that you use within your profession, if you try to engage with a legal document, even if in your own language, it becomes a challenge because it's a completely different register that you don't use in your everyday professional or private life. So this is what is meant by acknowledging that we all only can say that we have partial knowledge of languages we use. So this kind of idea of the native speaker having an overall competence of the entire language is what the European Council questions here. So basically, what plurilingualism promotes is that we need to look at language learning as a lifelong activity. So we are developing our language skills in our home language, in all other languages through our lifetime. And you can see that in terms of what happens to the use of English when we use different technology, English that you need for tweeting or for texting or for blogging. Obviously, all these different ways of using the language change with technology and obviously other factors. Also, plurilingualism recognizes that we are all creative and individual users of the languages we speak, and that we draw on all of our experiences. So the idea in the plurilingual approach is that we support children and learners to become effective communicators. And in order to become effective communicators, we also need cultural knowledge, knowledge of the context in which we operate. So this is why they're saying that really the emphasis needs to be not only on language, but also cultural awareness and looking to function in local, national, and international environment. And that we should really allow children to use their languages in a creative and individual way. In the document that you will get, I've given an example of a writer from Bosnia. He became bilingual later on in his 20s, and he won an award for writing novels in English. And basically in the review of his work, it is said that he uses English in a very creative, very different way. This obviously is linked with the fact that he's got another language that he uses, and that he obviously approaches English different to the use of native speakers. So I just want to say that, looking at creativity and individuality in that way can have its advantages, especially when it comes to producing work in creative writing. Okay, so these are some of the questions that I already highlighted. These are questions that you have in your document as well, that we can address in our discussion when I finish the presentation, but also if you obviously have other questions, there will be time to address them. Okay, now I want to move on to presenting you the research evidence, which was really the aim of this literature review. And I just want to say what this review is not about. It's not about importance of first languages to maintain culture, to make sure that children develop identity that is balanced and fulfilling. All of that stands, and obviously, provision of mother tongue is important in those aspects too. But I am focusing purely on research evidence that's to do with cognitive development and cognitive enhancement linked to bilingualism. And I will also explain why. Okay, first of all, I want to acknowledge obstacles that we have in terms of promoting bilingualism and enthusing children to learn other languages and to maintain their own languages. And in my own research, I've done studies on attitudes to bilingualism, and this is kind of with children, parents, head teachers, politicians, lead professionals. And this what came through very strongly in my data, that the biggest obstacle is the hierarchy of languages. There are certain languages which have high value, and I don't need to tell you that's French, Spanish, German, and other languages, they are seen as kind of lesser value or only valued within their communities. And I've interviewed children of Bengali-speaking origin, Bosnians, even Arabic-speaking, although Arabic is a world language, who basically say, one Arabic-speaking child said to me, "Miss, who needs the languages of immigrants?" And this became the title of my doctoral thesis, because I felt there was a critical moment of a child really saying, that there are things which are wrong with our system, okay, if children feel that about their language. So what we need to acknowledge is that due to historical circumstances, as Bourdieu says, not everything is possible. So if you have a language that's been a language of a major power of a country that's been involved in colonizations over a century, then the power of that language is obviously something that's much bigger than a power of a language of a country such as Bosnia that only gained independence a few decades ago. So there are big differences here in terms of perceived value. And also there is always the market value of a particular language which we have to engage with. And Chinese is an excellent example in this case, because a couple of decades ago, there was no interest in learning Chinese, opening Chinese supplementary schools or teaching Chinese on the curriculum. Now, lots of schools offer Chinese. Chinese teachers are very popular, and there is awareness that if we want to engage with the kind of economic boom happening in China, we need people who can speak Chinese. So that's a really good example. Also, when you look at Wales, Welsh language was a language that nearly died out, but because of the increased political autonomy, they've been able to pump resources into the revival of that language, and now it's doing well again. So these are the kind of historical circumstances that I'm talking about, and market forces, and they fluctuate, they change. And we as educators, we cannot influence those. And children will be receiving messages to do high and low value of their languages within wider society, in their playgroups, playgrounds, we don't have much control over that. So my kind of quest in my work has been to find an aspect in which all languages are equal, and to say, okay, this applies to all combination of languages, all bilingual children can benefit from this. This is just an example from my research where I interviewed a Conservative MP. Basically, he was commenting on Bengali child who said Bengali has no value. And this was an anonymous interview, so he basically said, this student is right, Bengali has no value. And he talked about economic value of languages and cultural value of languages, saying that in terms of the UK, it's only the indigenous languages such as Welsh which matter. Now, in the 60s, this was very different, and I interviewed people in Wales who got their parents still living, who used to wear Welsh not, which is a public shaming strategy if you used Welsh language. This is post-Second World War. So just to say, put this into context, that this obviously happened because of the political changes. Okay, so going back to finding an aspect where all languages are equal, and can provide the same advantages, and this is where cognitive advantages come into play. Okay, so the research evidence I'm going to present to you applies to all combination of languages, and I chose English and French because that's probably the most appreciated combination of languages in the UK. English and Bengali, Bengali as kind of a community that's been present in the UK for a long time, and you can see that child feels that his language only matters in his community. And English and Welsh, as I mentioned, probably par excellence case study in terms of what can be done and undone in terms of language death and language revival. Okay, so starting with preschool children with early years, very exciting research that was done at University of York in Canada. Basically, this research demonstrated that children who use 2 languages can focus better on their tasks, and they can ignore distractions better than their monolingual peers, because they're constantly operating with different priorities, and they have to negotiate obviously different vocabulary, different structure in their mind to produce the output that's expected of them. And this enhanced ability to concentrate has been also noted in adults. So this is something that stays with you throughout your childhood and adult life if you acquire languages at an early age. It is all about ignoring irrelevant information, which now we know it's also linked to issues that happen with the onset of dementia, which I'm going to address as well. Now, I talked about using 2 languages making a qualitative difference in terms of our brain functioning. But what we know now is that it also physically changes the brain. Okay, so really exciting clinical research that's identified denser gray matter in adults who use 2 languages. This is extremely important when it comes to language communication control. But what's also exciting about this is that it doesn't only apply to people who acquired languages at an early age. You can acquire second language in your adulthood as long as you become highly proficient in that language and you have regular use of that language. These type of changes will happen on your brain structure. Okay, clinical research has also shown that with bilingual speakers, there is more activity happening in their right hemisphere. As you are all aware, the Center for Speech is located in our left hemisphere, but once you start using 2 languages, there's lots of activity that happens in the right hemisphere as well. And this kind of enhanced neuroactivity has been so consistent in bilingual adults that they now call it neurological signature for bilingualism. So seeing the scans of brains of monolingual and bilingual people, you can immediately identify the functioning of a bilingual brain because there is more bilateral use. Now, this is also very important when it comes to accidents that cause amnesia or strokes, which will cause loss of a language. If you are bilingual, there is more chance because you will not be only using the center for speech in the left brain. And there is lots of clinical research to show this. Okay, so in terms of just providing you an overview of the clinical evidence that's been found, and we're talking here, people being connected to different machines and, recording all their activity, impulses in the brain. So what the researchers have found that there are differences when it comes to processing images as well, not only sounds. As I said, there's higher level of right hemisphere engagement. There is more of bilateral use. When it comes to education specifically, Jim Cummins is one of the lead educators in this field, and he's in his book, Language, Power and Pedagogy, he lists 160 studies that have been done across the world in different contexts. So we're talking different combination of languages, different combination of socio-economic backgrounds. All these studies provide evidence that children who use two languages will perform better across the curriculum. Especially there are studies which highlight links between bilingualism and maths, achievement in maths, and that's seen as being linked to higher level of abstract thinking, because when it comes to use of two languages, there is a kind of noted higher level of abstract thinking. So Cummins summarizes the main points in terms of enhancement that happens in the brain that's relevant to education, that children will basically have a wider range of thinking modes. Because they have to switch between two languages, they will be more flexible in their thinking, they'll be better listeners. And very important aspect is constant comparison of two language systems. And this can happen consciously, and we can support it as teachers, or it can happen subconsciously. And you probably know as learners of foreign languages that you always fall on your home language, your first language, to try and resolve something and think how to do it. And as a learner of another language, it's fascinating always to think, oh, we don't have that word, we don't have that special concept, we say that differently, or that structure is very different. So this is kind of an activity that's always happening, which then results in a higher level of metalinguistic skills. In terms of the models that are seen as relevant to education, it's the most influential has been interdependence theory, which is connected with minimal threshold linguistic competence, which is based on common underlying proficiency. This all sounds very complicated, but basically what it says, if you imagine an iceberg, Cummins often use iceberg analogy, that the big part of the iceberg is below the surface. This is our common underlying proficiency. And that's where all our linguistic knowledge and experiences are stored. These are the higher metalinguistic skills. What you see on the top, the tips of the iceberg, that's your language output in English, in French, in Bengali. They are very different, okay? But all the thinking that happens, that produces those outputs in different languages, happens in all the languages that you have. And if you happen to be with people who are from your own language background, then those people will relax into what is their thinking mode, and they will start using some English, some Bengali, some Bosnian, because they know everybody can understand. And this is kind of the natural way of thinking if you are using two languages. So basically, Cummins is saying we need to take on board that children are always drawing on this common underlying proficiency in the languages they use. If you notice, that's very much in line with what plurilingualism is saying. Okay, and going back to this threshold linguistic competence, this is about how high is our competence in our home language, in our second language, and no surprise, the higher the threshold, more benefits you have. And very important part of this threshold competence is literacy. It's very important to have access to developing and gaining literacy in your mother tongue, your home language. Obviously, in English, that will happen in your international school. Many children from diverse linguistic backgrounds do not have the opportunity to develop their literacy in their first language. And this is where mother tongue support provision is extremely important, because you will acquire the spoken language through interaction and immersion. But without explicit teaching of literacy, this will not happen. This obviously has impacts in terms of, what you can do later on in terms of having your skills recognized and being able to take exams and perhaps continue with your education, your career in terms of the languages that you speak. And very interesting way of looking at second language from Hammers and Blanc, who basically say that second language is a function of competence in the mother tongue. Okay, so that's really just that tip of the iceberg, but all the kind of thinking and decoding and coding that happens in terms of using the language happens within that common underlying proficiency that really starts with your first language. Okay, and I'm sure if you're not familiar with Jim Cummins, you're familiar with Vygotsky, and this kind of thinking goes back to his thinking that really, if a child acquires another particular system, that he or she can approach the language in a more abstract way and more general categories. And very interesting research that was done in the 60s where they asked children just to replace the words for moon and the sun and night and day, try and use the opposite word when they were asked. And bilingual children were so quick to do that exercise, because it's kind of just abstract supplement. But, if you do that with monolingual children, they kind of stick to the meaning of that word and find it hard to swap these terms. Okay, now in terms of latest evidence that we have, this is even more exciting than everything what I've told you so far. If you know anybody who suffers from dementia, you will know what a tragic illness it is. And it's not only about forgetting the names of people around you. You forget how to read, how to write. You forget your history. You forget who you are, even your name. There is no cure for dementia, and it is one of the biggest threats. In the UK, we even have strategy for addressing dementia because it's becoming such burden for society financially, but also just in terms of emotional burden for families and obviously people who suffer with that. So at the moment, there is no cure, but what this research has found is that if you use two languages, you can prepare your brain better for the time when you may suffer the onset of dementia. And they're saying that you'll be able to fight off dementia between 3 to 5 years. So we're talking about 3 to 5 years of quality life that you can gain with use of another language. Researchers from University of Edinburgh went to India, where obviously you have lots of multilingual people, and they worked with people who are literate in their first languages, who are not literate in their first languages, and they basically found that this advantage that's particularly linked to dementia is applicable to everybody. So even people who are not literate in their first language, they will still be able to build this, what they call cognitive reserve, which will help them delay dementia. Okay, so this is just basically saying that studying the relationship between bilingualism and cognition is one of our highest priorities. And from there, I'd like to say, well, what are the highest priorities then for education? And if we know that bilingualism is a source of significant cognitive advantage that impacts on one's well-being and quality of life, not only during education period, but also later on, this becomes really a moral imperative to promote it, to encourage it. And I'm not talking here only bilingual families. I'm talking here everybody being encouraged to engage with other languages, to learn them to high level of competency so that they can enjoy these benefits later on. So really, in conclusion, I'd like to say that by promoting bilingualism, making sure we're providing conditions for children to maintain it, to develop it, we are actually going to have double benefits in terms of enhanced performance across the curriculum and all these benefits that happen later on in life. And at the end, I just would like to highlight one warning that lots of people argue, even researchers, academics, that loss of home language is a natural shift that happens. Well, when you look around the world and the research that's been done with bilingual communities, it's the less affluent communities that will suffer the loss of their home language. So it's connected with socioeconomic status, with awareness, with just parents being informed how important it is and how much the kind of government will do to promote maintenance of the language in diaspora. But really, language loss is a loss for everybody who want to achieve better performance across the curriculum, better attainment, better equipped workforce across the world, better self-esteem at the individual level, and also longer dementia-free lives. Looking at kind of the next steps, we heard that Jane is going to do more research. We want to consider models of good practice that exist in other international schools, and also look at ways in which we can integrate more kind of support for mother tongue in curriculum in the school life, and look at developing school ethos, which is linked to a plurilingual approach. These are suggestions. Obviously, it's people who are in schools, who are on the front lines with children who can make this happen, but this is kind of just thinking about it. And we now come to some time for discussion. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Dina. So I'm now going to open the floor up for questions. So if you have any questions, then please either put them in the chat box or unmute your microphones and ask the question. Thank you. We've got a request for our participants at the campuses to be able to see you, Dina. So I'm going to turn on the webcam here so that they, if you'd like to come and stand here, and they can see you. Okay, do we have any questions here at Cobham?
Can I ask a question? I have the experience of either bilingual, so Dutch, English, or even three languages, French, English, Dutch, and German, English, and Dutch. My students often have a problem with self-worth. They sort of like say, okay, I have two languages or three languages, but they never, it's always like a moderate level. I'm never proficient in any language, and they feel that it's not good enough. So how do you help them? How do you sort of like say what you're doing is actually brilliant?
Well,
so Dina, might be good to repeat the question first so that the people at the campuses.
Okay, the question is children who are developing their home languages and kind of reflecting on the fact that perhaps they are not good enough, that they haven't achieved this level of proficiency that they want to be at, or perhaps these are the messages that they received in terms of what's acceptable, what they need to achieve. I think, again, getting the children to know the kind of a plurilingual approach and what's appreciated in terms of cultural awareness, in terms of being an effective communicator. I think that will make them appreciate more what they're doing and how far they can go, and also seeing their language learning as a lifelong development of skills. I think what they are kind of measuring themselves against is this ideal of the native speaker.
Like they do the SAT tests. They're like, oh,
yeah,
not good enough.
Yeah, so it's I think raising this awareness on variety of language skills and different levels of competencies and how they feed into our thinking, and also cognitive development. I've been developing a concept of what I call healthy linguistic diet, which I think should sit under healthy school initiatives, and that really started with having a focus discussion group where one child said, Miss, we underachieved because we use 2 languages, and another child saying, no, I read in a scientific journal that it's good for your brain. That made me think that we actually do not have sessions where we explicitly share with children this research in a way that's accessible to them, to say it is good for your brain, and this is why it's good, and this is how you can make it even better. Okay, so I think if they understand also a little bit about how this enhances their cognitive development, they can see more value in that. And I think Jane told me about an activity where Dutch-speaking children were trying to engage with a text which was in German, and kind of realizing how much knowledge they had, which helped them decode the German text. And just, structuring these activities where children can see that the value of their language is not only, how competently they speak to their parents or grandparents, but also that, once they might find themselves in a country where that language might be useful in this way. So a variety of ways, but I think it's moving away from having children think that only becoming a native speaker kind of level of competence is what matters.
I must say, I think we're doing quite well. I think in the middle school, especially, I can't speak for the upper sections, we have an International Language Week where every language in the school has a chance to say a few key phrases in their language. They're posted up in the hallways where people can read them, and there's sort of little mini quizzes, just for fun, based on, and lifts the profile of the languages, and children are aware of how many languages are actually spoken.
A colleague here was sharing with us activities during the International Week where languages are shared in a very open way, and children and staff are getting more aware in terms of how many languages are spoken. I know from Jane that there is a lot of good practice already. This is about, going a step further and making it even better and more significant in terms of teaching and learning as well.
I think it's also quite useful as a teacher to know what kind of language does this learner have. You get information about allergies and whatever, but you never know what is a language background.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sharing views here that, we get information about children's background in terms of their health, but sometimes we don't get information about linguistic background. So it's really important that teachers are aware what the linguistic background of their learners are, and also, obviously, if they're able to do work in that language and so on. Do we want to ask other sites if they've got questions?
Maybe we can encourage them to type it into the chat box, because that may be the easiest way. So they can all see the chat box.
They can, yes. So if you have got questions, then please type them into the chat box and we'll read them out here, and Dina can answer them. So please feel free to do that, or unmute your microphone and ask. We've got another question here at Coburn, so we'll take that, but please do ask questions. Fran?
Hi, Dina. My name is Fran. I'm going to try to use the microphone to see if that helps with the Egham and Hillingdon audiences.
Can I just check? Can you see the colleague on the microphone? Can you hear the colleague on the microphone? Okay, please continue.
I'm interested in whether you feel that students who are multilingual develop more than a one world view, that they have additional bigger views of the world because of their ability to communicate in the language and understand more than just the lingual aspects, but the cultural aspects and those skills necessary to think about the world in different ways other than what you described as the hierarchy. The world systems theory of core, periphery, and semi-peripheral countries are sort of ingrained in where we're positioned in the world. But do you find that students who are plurilingual have a different worldview?
this question is about somebody who is multilingual having a different worldview to somebody who is monolingual. Well, I think that you can never learn language in isolation. You always learn language and you learn some of the culture. Now, I'm working a lot with students from Asia, from China and Vietnam and from Japan, and they say that they study English as a foreign language, and then there is dominance of books which are for them to learn English, but they're based on American culture. And then in some other countries, you will find it's the British culture. Okay, so language will always come with a culture. Obviously, a worldview is highly individual aspect of our existence, and it's shaped by other aspects such as religion and socioeconomic background as well, and so on. But researchers talk about hybrid identities and also transnational identities, where the identity becomes more fluent and you are not firmly kind of anchored in one culture, but you kind of integrate other cultures that you are familiar with in your own worldview, in your own lifestyle. Okay, and Salman Rushdie talked about, in his poetic way, about having a line run through his tongue and also sometimes falling between two chairs. It is a very complex experience of being bicultural, bilingual, and I think I would side most with researchers who really write about this kind of transnational identity where, it's across different cultures rather than, again, keeping them in separate boxes.
Okay, we have a question from Hillingdon.
Excellent.
How would you encourage ACS as an organisation to help our students maintain their home languages? Yeah.
Well, from what I've seen so far, obviously, the mother tongue provision that you have, even though it's once a week, I consider that's extremely important. And I highlighted developing literacy in home languages. And I think that nothing can replace this, kind of explicit teaching in first language. And it's really important to maintain that, provide that, and it's excellent that you do that. Now, it's once a week, okay? So that is not a lot. We need to think collectively in terms of how we can make bilingualism, plurilingualism really an integral part of teaching and learning. In my career as a teacher, I worked in Haverstock School in London, and one of the first sessions with my Bengali-speaking children, I said to them, can you please write your homework in English and in Bengali? They were shocked that they were, year 7, nobody's ever asked them to write anything in Bengali. These children were highly literate, able to produce beautiful work in Bengali. They were first of all suspicious of me. Now, miss, but you can't read Bengali. Why would we do that? And I said, well, I want to see what your script looks like. And then they said, and miss, when we have new children from Bangladesh, they can read it, we can put it on the walls. And there was this immediate awareness that, that they can engage other people to that. And they said that our parents can see it when they come. And they said often our parents say that they feel they will lose us because we're losing the language and so on. But having parents come to school and see children's work in their home language communicates that children are supported to maintain it, that the culture is welcome, but not only in terms of let's celebrate it during one international week, but it's part of the landscape of the school and it's part of structured teaching and learning. So I think it's important to think of opportunities where you can slot it in without actually taking away from the curriculum. If you're doing a play, just say to children, can you do a poster for this play in your home language? They can go home, ask parents to help them, siblings to help them, and then you can have advertising for your school play in 12 languages. And we've done that, and it's so exciting. And then, it becomes really something that they feel more ownership of.
Just reflecting on what you said, I wonder if it's possible for ACS to create some materials that only teams or individuals who can speak more than one language can solve. Because if we simply put things into there which the English speakers can solve and do well at, that kind of reinforces I know we're a group of schools who English is our language of instruction, but if we're going to get people to value more than one language and bilingualism, I know from the tiny bits of other languages I have, it helps me read things in different cultures that I never knew was there. So if we could create some materials which says you may be faced with this in your future, and only some people can solve that, or the only people who can get to the end of the game are people who can speak 2 or 3 languages, then there's a reward, a kind of psychological reward for that skill.
Yeah, these are all excellent ideas. This idea was about how we can communicate that we value languages more. So having activities, materials where you would need to work with multilingual children to exploit their multilingual skills in order to finish a game or to finish an activity and to gain that reward. So yes, fantastic. We need these kind of ideas and to develop some sort of a toolkit, a set of guidance and examples of really what people can take with them and then try to obviously adapt to their practice.
It's also about creating the physical context, the physical space for languages to interact and for common language groups to have access to each other. For example, in our the school in The Hague, International School of The Hague, their early years is wide open, free flow. All of the classes interact all the time, and the children make choices of who they play with and what languages they speak. And then they bring CAS students down with the same language, different languages, and interact with the children. They have a lot more to do with the parents in the school with their languages. So they treat both the children in the school and the parents and the support in the community as a resource. So less of this deficit view of the non-English speaker. It's more of a treat them as a resource. And if you look at it, the Native Language Enrichment Program has got the highest concentration of all of those resources in one place. So it's a question of making that more available or creating similar situations in your school day.
This is an example about creating open space and facilitating opportunities for children to meet who speak the same language but maybe from different year groups and to bring other children in order to have activities which happen in their first language. This was an example from International School in The Hague.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, then we have one more question here.
Sorry, I have one more question, and it sort of follows up on the conversation and the previous question. So for ACS, I'm just trying to think this out. So I know there's some bilingual schools where there's plurilingual teaching within the classroom setting, where one teacher will teach some sort of content in English, and then new content is taught, say, in French. So they're not repeating each other. They're continuing, yeah. But then I have another friend who has taught in another school where the class is split in half. Now the class is together, but there's 2 teachers in the class. One will teach in English, and then the content is repeated in the other language. In this case, it was Arabic. But in a school where you're trying to have equality of languages, what kind of model do you think might work for us if we were to be more inclusive, in what happens in the classroom? And Jane talked about what can happen in spaces, and Chris mentioned problems that could be reliant on different languages. have you seen any models like in international schools where we have 60 different languages?
Well, in mainstream schools, there are also 60 different languages and more. Again, it's individual examples, like, a teacher of English who was finding very hard to teach Macbeth because children are finding it so irrelevant to their current lives, and they couldn't see, they're very openly and strongly saying, what is the relevance of this to our lives? And he basically decided to say, okay, the speech with the dagger, each one of you will do in your own language. So they all read it in English, they read the original, and then when it came to the day of performance, they all did it in their own language. This completely transformed the way they engaged with Macbeth. They said Macbeth was the best unit of work they did, because suddenly it had a connection, and it was a challenge to, translate that speech and to do it in their home language. So it's really being creative in a way and thinking how you stay on course in terms of covering the curriculum that you need to cover, and engage other languages in a way that's not taking away in terms of understanding what it is about. Everybody knew what the speech was about, and going through it, in several languages didn't hurt anybody. So, that's kind of a good example. But also, some schools have used foreign languages. There's an example from a school in Coventry who was struggling with their results in French, and they used French to teach some of their curriculum in geography. And what happened, they not only raised their results in French, they also raised their results in geography, because everybody had to prepare better. Teachers had to prepare better. They had to explain more the keywords, key concepts. And, this simply had an impact. Everybody had to concentrate. So, I'm not only promoting here use of home languages, I'm also saying let's think creatively about foreign languages too. And, Stephen Krashen, who is one of the lead linguists, he says there are no different fields. English first language, second language, foreign language. It's all the same field. It's all about communication and skills that we need to develop. So it's really trying to pull all of that energy and expertise that you have together and just think creatively.
I'll join us one more time, thanking Dina for having come down to present this afternoon. Thank you, Egham and Hillingdon, for joining us this afternoon. We're going to say goodbye for now. I do want to remind you that there will be a video recording of today's session that we will post on the SIM website by the end of the week. And to get to the SIM website, you go to the ACS website and connect through from there. We also will be posting an electronic version of the literature review. So for those of you who weren't able to join us today, there will be a couple of paper copies at your campus. This wasn't something we published. We've just produced some paper copies just to make it easier for people to read. We will send some along to the other campuses. Everyone who's here today is going to get a paper copy to take away with you. And we hope that you will, first of all, read it and look at the kind of the depth of information that's contained in it, but also share it with colleagues and other people in your departments and in your divisions. As a quick reminder, our next event is the 16th of May, which is our celebration of learning, 9:30 to 12. We hope all of you will be able to join us for that. Thank you again very much.